Hey guys, welcome back to Critical African Thinkers. So today I want to talk about Loury and his discussion about climate change. Climate change used to be the hot button topic relatively recently. That was until the pandemic came. The conversation sort of shifted away from climate change now to the pandemic. But it's still an issue, it's still a topic that's been addressed in certain quarters, and it was a very divisive issue with some people claiming that there is a climate crisis and emergency, that we need to do something now, we need to do drastic things, if not we're all going to die within a couple of years. And then on the other side, there are other people who just dismiss it and say, no, this is not a problem, this is not something that we have to act so much on, that we have to spend so much resources on. So that's why it's refreshing to hear Glenn Loury's thoughts on this climate issue, on the debate on climate change, on whether or not the responses that are being proposed, they are proportionate to the dangers that we're going to face, or whether they are going to be effective in the long run in tackling the climate issue. So let's get into this conversation.
This is the question that I have. What's your take on human-caused climate change?
To Bauer or to me?
To you. This is to you.
Okay. They're going to call me a skeptic. And the reason is that I'm very impressed with what I don't know about what's going on, and about the role of human activity in it, and about the role of other forces in what's going on. I'm very impressed by what I don't know. I don't know what technology is going to be in 50 or 75 years. I don't know what geothermal activity might do to the climate that is episodic and hard to predict, etc. And in virtue of the fact that I don't know a lot that I would need to know in order to be able to assess the consequences of any large structural interventions that were aimed at, quote unquote, saving the planet, I'm a skeptic. I'm a show me type guy. I'm a, hold on a minute. Before you do that.
Now, this is a very important point that Glenn is making, because he says he really doesn't have enough information to be swayed in either direction. So he wants to err in the side of caution. He wants to err in the side of, okay, what exactly do we know right now? And then to those people who are believing that this is an emergency, the whole world is going to be wiped off in a few years, are they humble enough to say that they don't know enough? Are they humble enough to say that, wait, do I have all the facts in this issue? Do I have all the information informing my decision on these issues? Especially politicians. I mean, politicians, they are no scientists, and a lot of the time, political leanings or political affiliations or political motives usually cloud many of the things or the policies that they bring out. So how are we so sure that this hysteria over the climate change issue, over the climate crisis issue, how are we so sure it is not much more political than it is actually about science? So I appreciate the fact that Glenn is laying the background that he doesn't know so much about it. So before we want to reorder the whole structure of human society, let's hold on a bit and say, okay, what exactly are we doing here?
Let's think it through. I don't know how to weigh future versus present generations in any kind of philosophically coherent way. There just seem to me to be many, many hard problems. So there's a rush to judgment. There's a stampede that's going on here, I feel, of well-meaning in a substantial part. I don't, and these are not children. Greta Thunberg is not a child. I mean, she is a sensibility. She is representing a generational. I think it has to be taken very, very seriously.
Actually,
but when I was at the CASPAS, at the Center for Advanced Study in Behavioral Sciences 5 years ago, there were some scholars there whose project was how to persuade people to get on board with global warming, with a concern about climate change. How to overcome their natural. That kind of thing gave me the creeps. It gave me the willies, because I felt like a kind of messianic movement of almost quasi-religious character, resting upon cloudy and unclear foundations, both in terms of the technological dynamic that's unfolding, as well as the normative judgments about what is the right and the wrong thing to do. Save the planet is not, it's a campaign slogan. I get that, but it's...
Yeah, I think it's, religion is losing its influence, and there is no vacuum in nature. Something has to take its place. And this is what is taking its place. I mean, the religious fervor is still there, even though it might not take the trappings of a theology, but it's still there. So people would always come up with things that have the religious cloak on it.
Not exactly a public policy program, and so I'm a skeptic in that sense. But I'm awake to the when people tell me we've got wildfires, we've got more intense storms, when every account of a meteorological event gets filtered through the climate change thing, I'm holding my wallet, intellectually speaking. I am resisting the undertow to succumb to the moral panic. That's where I am, man. So you guys cancel me. Go ahead, cancel me if you want to.
And yeah, I think many people are familiar with the statement that weather is not climate. I mean, the weather is forever changing. Even within my lifetime, in my own country, I've seen how the weather has shifted. So we cannot judge the climate with activities that have happened over a relatively short period of time. We cannot use that as a basic indicator of that, okay, climate is really changing and it's going to be disastrous. Who knows what would have happened 1,000 years ago with the weather? Who knows what happened 2,000 years ago? Who knows what happened 100,000 years ago with the weather? And we're still here. So let's not panic over the fact that the weather is changing. Weather is not climate.
I think that's there's a couple of things. One, how socialist of you to rely on future technologies to solve the problem. That's a very Soviet Union approach.
I don't want to rely. Just correct the record. I'm not saying it's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. I'm just saying I don't know, and I want to factor in this uncertainty.
I think it's pretty difficult to say that there's no connection between consumption, industrialization, capitalism, and climate change. I think that is a pretty clear connection. And if we're talking about Pascal's wager, again, where the consequences could be so deadly.
I mean, what's the correlation between capitalism and climate change and all this? Well, okay, we can say that industrialization and all that. But people have to produce things in any system at all. Communist system, a socialist system, there's still going to be industries. So how is an economic system, how is it somewhat tied exclusively to climate change? Any economic system you're going to run will still have to involve industries, will still have to involve feeding people, will still have to involve creating things, will still have to involve probably using some of the basic materials that we're currently using. So I don't get how somehow climate change is a fault of capitalism.
I think you have to do something about that, and you have to point to the fact that one country currently dominates the globe, and that's the United States.
Well, hold on. I've been to India. I've it's a country of how many? A billion?
Yeah.
I've seen that rising middle class in cities like Kolkata and Delhi and so on. Those are hundreds of millions of people. They all want a vehicle. They all want an apartment. They all want an internet connection. They all want air conditioning. Every single one of them. There are a lot of people like that all over this planet. If we don't change the definition of a meaningful human life, well lived in the 21st century, such that it's okay to be born and to die within a 2-hour or 4-hour drive from the same place, and to live more modestly and in a different sense of what it means to have a fulfilling life, including being prepared to surrender to a 60-year life expectancy instead of a 90-year life expectancy, if that's what it came to. It's a spiritual challenge to us as a human community. Mainly, there are technical challenges to be solved, but the fundamental challenges are spiritual challenges about what is the meaning of a good life. And right now, our carbon footprint is way, way, way too high, and I don't think fiddling around at the margins is going to do a lot about that.
I think that's right, and I think if...
I sympathize with Glenn's position in the sense that probably the trend in which the world is going right now, where everybody wants to have this, everybody wants to have cars, everybody wants to have high-rise buildings. You talked about China. You're not even talking about Africa. You haven't even gotten to Africa, where we still have a whole lot of development to do, which means we're still going to need more industries. We're still going to need more cars. We're still going to need more of these things that will lead to, in quote, climate change. So, in that sense, would I be willing to give up my desire to have those good things that the West currently endures for the sake of the climate? Would I be willing, in the words of Glenn, to accept to live just to 60 years rather than 90 years to save the climate? Would many people be willing to do that? I don't think so. I don't think I want to give up that kind of life. I don't think I want to give up to 30 years of my life just so the climate can be saved. No, I don't think I'm that messianic. I want to live a good life, and I want to have the things that the West currently enjoys, and a lot of people want to have those things, and if they're going to have those things, they're going to have to industrialize. So cutting down on carbon footprint, that is a luxury that the West can afford to engage in currently. Sadly, not us in the other parts of the world that are still developing.
If the Chinese and rising Indian middle classes lived like the American middle class, the world would be destroyed. I think that's difficult to argue against in terms of carbon emissions. But Glenn, I would say that your spiritual problem is ultimately rooted in material. I mean, what destroyed those communal bonds? What destroyed those organic connections that used to define people? I would say it's capitalism. And there's a lot of conservatives would say it's capitalism. Again, I don't know if you've read Patrick Deneen's Why Liberalism Failed, but that's a very conservative critique of liberalism, and it's ultimately...
I don't understand why people always blame capitalism for evil things. I mean, it's an economic system. It's not a way of life. It doesn't dictate how you do. It only organizes a market, or how people exchange goods and services. I think the breakdown in the family would just have happened under a communist system, under a socialist system, under any other market system. So I don't think it's a capitalism problem. I don't think it's a failure of capitalism. Probably it's a failure of other things to check the economic system, because ultimately almost all economic systems, if they are not checked, will become toxic and corrupt. So I don't think it's uniquely a capitalism problem. But anyhow, I think I agree with the sentiment of Glenn Loury, and I think his instincts on this are spot on, that we should hold on a bit because we do not know so much about how to tackle this problem. Are we ready to give up so much just so that we can save the climate? And how much of an impact would us giving up so much have on the long run? So we have to do a risk-benefit analysis here, which is better for us on the long run. So, well, that's the video. Tell me what you think in the comment section below. Until next time, remain awesome.